I started giving that to the children because I didn't want them to have to go through missing out, potentially having an accident at 19 and your whole world being turned upside down and not knowing what on earth to do. Why
Right.
can't we teach these things earlier? Why
Yeah.
do we have to wait till the crisis moment? Right? In preparation, you will find yourself peaceful amidst the storms of life.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Experience Podcast. My name is Tejasva or Tex, and together, you and I are going to have amazing conversations with amazing people and learn so much through our experiences. This is a listener-supported podcast, so any level of Patreon subscription or one-time donation will be accepted with a lot of gratitude and used back to making this podcast experience even greater. In today's episode, I can't wait to welcome Sonal. We're going to be talking about what real education might mean and how this impacts our entire life. But first, let's take a deep breath and close our eyes and reflect on the word education. Maybe it's a feeling, a memory, a person, an environment, or whatever else may come to mind. And whenever you're ready, you may open your eyes. Keep this thought in mind, maybe write it down on a piece of paper, because we will come back to it later in the episode. If you're comfortable, we'd love to know what you thought of, so please do share with us in the comments below, or feel free to message us. Let's begin. Welcome back to the Experience Podcast, everybody. Today with us, we have Sonal. Sonal is a very, very deep and inspiring person. She's a full-time tutor, but she also runs a gym, but not the kind of gym that you're thinking of. She runs something known as a soul gym, and it's aimed at spreading knowledge and food for the soul. Here's a quick fun fact about Sonal and I. We've actually never met, but we've had so many amazing deep conversations over Zoom.
Very, very true. Thank you for having me here. I'm really looking forward to yet another amazing conversation. Can't believe we haven't met. That's strange. I actually didn't even think of that because I feel like I've already met you in many ways, and it's amazing. There's some people I've met so many times, yet have never really explored so much depth of conversation. So yeah. That's
Definitely.
volumes about you. I hope I can live up to your kind words.
Oh, please. No, it goes both ways. I think it's not every day that we find somebody that we've not been able to meet, but we've been able to engage in such thoughtful and insightful conversations. But Sonal, how are you these days, and what have you been up to?
These days, I have to say, I'm just grateful to be doing what I love every day. In terms of my work, as you said, I am a teacher. I didn't always know that I was supposed to be a teacher. Perhaps that's something we can speak about later.
Sure.
And otherwise, I'm just grateful that lockdown is slowly lifting right now, because I've really missed a lot of people that I just wasn't able to see. That many of us have not been able to see. It's hard not being with friends and family, friends who are like family, pretty much. So yeah, it's been lovely to see people again as well. So.
Amazing, yeah. So you said you're a teacher. Is that what you've been doing lately?
Yes, I've been teaching. I mean, teaching and coaching are two areas where my calling lies, definitely, in this life. And the bulk of my time is spent in how I can serve more in both those areas. Yeah.
So it's an interesting word you use. It's your calling. So would you say that tutoring and teaching is something you've always wanted to do? since childhood?
No, actually, it's something I discovered, wow, only in the last about 7 years, actually. So,
Wow.
you know, um, it came later on in life for me, discovering, what I truly wanted to do. Not just wanted to do, but I feel like I can do.
Hmm.
Self-discovery is not as sort of quick for everyone.
Hmm.
It's not the life is not linear. Actually, it's circular.
Yeah.
And so it's not like, oh, by this age I'm going to figure out what I want to do, and everyone is going to figure it out by their age. And sometimes we sort of pigeonhole and we box things and ourselves and other people, but actually someone's personal journey is a very unique thing, and anything can happen at any moment.
Yeah,
you
for
know
sure.
yeah, expect the unexpected.
So tell us a little bit about how that happened. So how did you so let's talk a little bit about what you wanted to be when you were younger, or was there something you had in mind?
Yeah.
And how did that change from that to then, you finding out that this is your calling in life?
Okay, yeah, great question. I'd say pretty much till the age of 18, I just went with the motions of who and what I saw in the world around me, because they say we're a product of the five people we spend the most time with, often. And I grew up around very sort of academic people amongst my friends and my cousins. I went to quite a like a prestigious school. It was a grammar school, so I had to sit a special entrance exam for the
Hmm.
11 plus, which I
Hmm.
actually now incidentally tutor in. I'm an 11 plus expert tutor. And I always did well in school, not to show off or anything like that, but I got 10 A stars and an A for my GCSEs. I got
Wow.
3 A's for my A levels in biology, chemistry, and maths. And my cousin was a dentist, actually, and I was thinking, oh, I think I'll probably do medicine or dentistry. It's like those were the kind of talks that would, I can't even remember how they came into my mind, but somehow I got to that decision. Before that, I'm not one of those people who was like, oh, since I was a child, I wanted to be this. Right? I spoke to someone the other day. They said, since I was a child, I wanted to be a recruitment consultant. And this gentleman is a recruitment consultant now. So some people have that, but I definitely didn't.
Hmm.
Maybe around the times where I had to choose my potential career, and we had a careers advisor at school, perhaps through those talks, you know, something came up.
Hmm.
And I chose to do dentistry in the end. I went to King's College London. I was doing that, again, getting distinctions every year. But just before my second year, I had like a holiday with my family in Switzerland.
Hmm.
And we were doing this really fun activity called mountain karting. Like my mom did it, my uncle did it, my cousin. And it's sort of like a go kart. And you have this pole that attaches to the wheel of the go kart. It takes you up the
Right.
mountain. So I
Okay.
was I was on it for about, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds, and my cart hit a rock. So then I fell to the left, and
Oh,
I had like a big impact on my left shoulder, right? I was 19 years old, about to go into my second year of dentistry. And, it sort of ruined my holiday because it's at the beginning of the holiday. And then I had
oh,
like this sling. But went to the Swiss hospital, they took an x ray, and, they said there's nothing dislocated, there's nothing fractured, there's nothing broken. It's just this joint in the shoulder slightly moved out of position. So they're like, you'll just need some physio for it. Got back to
sure.
London, had physio, was fine. But then I started getting lower back pain about a couple of months after that. And, 17 years later, that pain is still there. Like I have a chronic pain condition, which affects my lower back and my left arm. So that's when everything changed. I was almost forced to look for a different career because dentistry is just, it exacerbated and aggravated my pain. doing, I was doing fillings, taking out teeth, doing root canals, dentures, everything, because I really struggled and strived to get to my fourth year. I even tried to repeat my fourth year, but my back pain was just getting more and more and more, and I just got to a point where I was like, I can't do this. We hang on so hard sometimes to something that's not right for us. And I think I did that because I didn't really know who I was or how to deal with uncertainty, how to deal with challenge and change. I don't feel like I really had an education in that. And so I didn't know how to deal with it when that happened in my life. And I
Right.
have to admit, I was really, really depressed when this happened in my life because I felt like I lost everything. Like I lost my health, I lost my career, I lost my potential path to earning a living and finances for myself. I lost friends. I lost
Oh no.
family kind of identity because I'm always like this clever person who's doing really well. And suddenly I'm at home and like lockdown was nothing new to me because I was like stuck at home for 6 months with this pain, like, when I was in my late teens, 20s. So I went through so many modalities of medical treatment, and eventually, about 4 years after that initial accident, the doctors just said, "You know what? We've just tried everything, and you're just gonna have to learn to manage this pain that you have." So I was put on a chronic pain management course, and on that course, there was a physiotherapist. She's one of my teachers. We're talking about education today. This is probably one of the defining moments of when I started to realize what is real education,
Okay.
right? Because I was standing in the room with her because sometimes, like when my pain flares up, it's very difficult for me to sit. I just can't sit sometimes. Um, so she said, "Oh, I just need to note down, the length of time you can sit." And I was like, "I can't sit right now." And she said, "Well, even if it's just for a second, just sit down and I'll note that." And I was like, "You want me to sit for just 1 second?" Like I was like a frustrated, teenager at this time, or whatever, my early 20s, and very confused. But she was just very calm and composed and confident. And she was like, "Yeah, just sit for a second." So I literally sat down for a second, got back up like some kind of jack in the box, and it was like, "Okay, great, 1 second." And I'm like, "What is that? That's nothing. Like 1 second." She was like, "Now we're going to like gradually build that up, I'm going to show you that when you have a flare up, this is how to build up your sitting time again in a way that doesn't make it worse and prolong it." Right.
Wow.
And that's what I learned. I learned pacing. I learned how to um, increase things gradually at my own pace, in my own way, in my own time. And that giving oneself the space to be oneself, self-acceptance, that's what I learned. That is one of the biggest lessons we struggle to learn. Self-acceptance. I did not accept myself. I did not like the person I was or the situation and circumstances I was now in. The life that I wanted was no longer mine, and I didn't know what else I was supposed to do in life.
Wow.
But after that course, which was for 4 weeks in a group of people with chronic pain, I went to I thought I don't want to go to university and fail and not be able to pass, like with dentistry, like student loans and all that. And my dad was like, "Oh, one of his best friends is a pharmacist." He was like, "Why don't you go in the pharmacy and see if you like it?" And I went and I thought, "Oh yeah, I guess I could do this." Again, because I never really knew what I wanted to be. I just went with the flow. I thought, I've done dentistry, so this should be okay. I don't want to do pharmacy, but I'll be a pharmacy technician because with my struggles with my health now, that's something realistic for me,
Sure.
So that's what I did. In between, I thought maybe I'll be a medical secretary, but I was really not good at audio typing, right? Like I was just not fast enough. So again, this whole thing of self-discovery is part of real life education, not
Mm.
academic education, but
Mm.
who we are as people. We have to
Mm.
discover that. I started discovering, oh, I'm not so good at audio typing, or, oh, yeah, I could work in the pharmacy. So I worked in the NHS in dentistry for 4 years. Then I worked in pharmacy for 4 years, again in the NHS. I trained at Great Ormond Hospital, applied for a job there. But again, after 4 years, I had another flare up. I was at home feeling down, and I'm like, I don't want to go back to pharmacy.
Mm.
I'm we need pharmacists in the world, but I don't think I'm supposed to be a pharmacy technician, right? And I was walking along the high street, saw this advert for a maths and English tuition, a tutor at a tuition center, just like, on our high street. I was like, why don't I try that? It's part time, it's just up the road, it's something different. I went, and the day of my interview, 8th of January 2014, I had the worst nausea ever.
Oh
Literally,
no.
a friend of ours, actually, Chetna, Dr. Chetna Kang, she said on a talk that we went to on Sunday that sometimes when you're having an identity change, like the heat can be turned up. The heat was really turned up that day because I'd been at home for 6 months. And 3 times I went to this tuition center, like, we don't have any vacancies. Finally, the third time I get the interview, and I just feel like I'm, going to be sick, and I can't go to an interview and do that. So I called them up, and I thought, I'm going to have to cancel, I'm going to have to reschedule. Someone picked up the phone, and then I was like, they were like, hello? And I was like, I just put down the phone. I was like, I
Oh
have
no.
got to get to this interview. And I went, and we were like on a tour around the center. And I'm thinking, any moment, I am just going to be sick, and this is going to be the most memorable interview ever. Somehow it subsided. I got the job. I
Wow.
worked there for 9 months. I was 29 years old in a bright blue t-shirt on minimum wage after careers in dentistry and pharmacy. And my family and friends are thinking, what are you doing? Your colleagues are doing their GCSEs. And it was the first time in my life I could say I love my job.
Wow.
I was like,
Wow.
I'm doing what I love. This is what
Mm.
this is what I'm good at. This is what I enjoy. This is how others are going to get the best of me. It was like a total win-win situation, and nothing else mattered. I didn't care about all the other factors about minimum wage and this and that. What am I going to do in my future? And it was just so insignificant to think about those things because, yeah, again, it was another point in my education about myself. And for us all, I hope anyone listening to this podcast can see that find what you love to do
Mm.
and pursue that fully. That's what I did. And here I am, 7 years later, still doing it.
I think that's really inspiring, Sonal, because what you had to go through regarding your and what you are still going through actually is not easy. And it is something that I'm sure you've had a lot of problems with, a lot of struggles with. And you know I know now, at least, there are a few people who consciously try and support you with that. So if you ever, when we're going for classes, or as you said, there are some amazing people in our lives who are happy to pick you up and stuff. But initially, I mean, that must have been really problematic, but you still persevered, and you grew from it. And I think in some ways, you know you got to find something that you ended up loving, right? And obviously it's not an easy thing to hear at all, but I just think your story is really, really inspiring. So thank you for sharing that. Can you tell us a little bit about what was it in this, teaching and education side of things that you said you started loving? What
Mm.
aspect of it was it?
Yeah, it's a really nice question. As teachers, educators, it's a professional job in one
Mm.
sense, but you're also being trusted in a very significant way to help someone, in their life. And I just felt so much meaning and purpose in doing that for the children. I remember one time in that center, where there was this girl and I don't know, had a really bad sore throat and she couldn't speak. So I was playing hangman with her on the whiteboard,
Right.
and I would do this thing where I'd, put my empty word and she'd have to guess. And I would put down words, opposite words, that were to do with character,
Mm.
consciousness, right?
Mm.
The quality of us as people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and, so as an example, maybe I'd put angry and calm,
Okay.
angry and calm. And then I would have discussions with them, sometimes on my own real life experience. A time where I've been angry, and then I'd ask them the time they've been angry.
Mm-hmm.
And why would we choose being calm where calm is really what is needed?
Mm-hmm.
Why would we do that? And why can't we? Why do so many of us struggle with that? I would have these kinds of conversations with children. And, that's because growing up, I didn't actually even like reading till I started reading books on spirituality and self-development when I was like post 22 years old.
Sure.
And I started teaching the children what I was actually learning about, things like meditation, mindfulness. I mean, it's big now, but I was reading about it back then. One of our common teachers, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, has written a
Mm.
book, Conquering the Enemies of the Mind, or, Making the Mind Your Best Friend. There's two
Yep.
books he's written on the
Mm.
mind. And he talks about mindfulness in there, which is, this book was like 15 years ago.
Mm.
Right? So I was talking to children about this stuff. They loved it. They're like, what kind of teacher are you? They look at me like I'm some kind of an alien. They're like, why are you teaching me maths and, English and all this stuff?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know what? I was like, the same kind of education that I was craving my whole life and was missing until I was 22, right? I started giving that to the children because I didn't want them to have to go through missing out,
Mm.
potentially having an accident at 19 and your whole world being turned upside down and not knowing what on earth to do. Why
Right.
can't we teach these things earlier? Why do
Yeah.
we have to wait till the crisis moment? Right? In preparation, you will find yourself peaceful amidst the storms of life.
Wow. Yes.
But we don't do that preparation and groundwork because we just do whatever everyone else has been doing, or what most people do, we could say. It's not that what I'm doing is I'm the only person that's doing it. There are many people doing it, but it's rare in my experience. It's rare to
I
find those
agree.
kinds of educators and people in the world.
I agree. No, definitely. And it's something I relate to a lot as well. And I think it's an aspect of why people. I've been called an overthinker my entire life, whereas I always thought I was never really overthinking. I was just thinking about things that were important that nobody around me was willing to have a conversation about.
Yeah.
And so anytime I was doing anything even slightly different from my academic syllabus, people would be like, are you crazy? Why are you wasting your time? But I'd go like, but these are the things that are actually helping me grow mentally. They're making me understand the world a little bit more. And, everybody like, yeah, no, but you should be preparing for IIT. IIT is great institute in India, and
Yeah.
it's an amazing institute. But so many people are, trying so hard to get into this institute, and they're just working nonstop, day and night, to get into it. But when I saw people do that, and they stopped doing sports, they stopped doing arts, they stopped doing music and dance and all the things we used to do in school, and we were forced to only work on our science and maths. And that made me wonder, why is this so important? And it is important, in my opinion. I really love the subject, so I think it's really cool, and the things we can do with maths and science is amazing. But
Yeah.
there was something missing, and I just didn't know what. So when I grew, like, I started rebelling against the education system when I was like 11 or 12. If you ask my friends back home, they'll be like, "Yeah, this guy started young," but but it just happened to
Starting
be that,
young
you
is a
know,
good thing. That's what we need more of.
and that it was a bit of an existential. I mean, people don't usually have existential crisis at like 12 years old, but when I was 8, I looked at Iron Man and I said, "This guy's an engineer who just made a flying suit. I want to do that." And by the time I was 12, nobody was teaching me how to do that. So I was like, "Wait, what's going on?" And I was like, "Okay, fine. Maybe I'm too young. Maybe I don't understand the world yet." And it's true, I don't understand the world yet. But when I was 16 and I was sent to the UK and I went to a boarding school, the same thing was happening all over again. You know, it was a little bit better, I will not lie. I had some great teachers in this high school, but the general theme was still missing. It was still get your grades, get your marks, apply to a good university so you can rise up the social ladder, which does have its pros, definitely, but there's still something missing. So when I started teaching, when I started tutoring part time,
Yeah.
I tutored this girl for 1.5 years. And I wasn't making a lot of money out of it, but I genuinely just enjoyed it. And every time, and when I asked her mother, "So why did you choose me?" She said, "Because you're not a lot older than her." She was, I think, 15. I was 18, 19 at the time. So it's a little bit more relatable. The content is still fresh in my head. So I was teaching her GCSE related things. And initially, when I started talking deep with her, she'd be like, "What a weird guy." You know, because all her friends are probably talking about something different or something that the younger generations are talking about. And here I am, I'm like, "Yo, so what do you think about life?" She's like, "I don't know how to answer that." And I could tell, but she felt a little bit weird. But I taught her for 1.5 years. And, you know, even just looking at it on a monthly basis, I could tell she was growing mentally. And in my opinion, you know, when we talk about education and we talk about good students or good teachers, most people are always talking about, "Oh, yeah, you know, work hard." Yes, I agree. You should definitely work hard, but work hard in the right direction.
Mm.
So if you're saying that someone's not good at maths and you're trying to teach them, I don't know, something completely different, it doesn't make any sense. Now, obviously, we have to spend more time teaching the person maths, but most of the time, what's happening in their head, in my opinion, or from my own experiences as that kid and as a tutor, is they just don't care.
Mm.
And why should they? Because it's boring.
Mm. For
But
some
if you
people,
start,
yeah.
yeah, and the moment you start introducing why this is a really cool idea to learn maths and science, the flip just switches. And so tackling the root sort of, okay, I know you find this subject boring, but this is what we can do with it. Isn't that really cool? And Sonal, initially they'll be like, "What a lame guy." That's what they're thinking probably. But I don't mind. You persevere and you take it to the next level. And what I started doing with my tutees recently was they're like 11, 12 years old. And I was teaching them how to do areas.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have an area of a triangle, we have an area of a rectangle, and so on. And
Mm-hmm.
the kid just goes like, "But why do I need this?" I'm like, "Okay, imagine you're working for me in my company,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and we're making rockets. What I've given you is a task to calculate the area of this rocket." So I drew them the shape, combined the triangle and the rectangle, and I said, "This is a rocket. It's a simplified rocket, but it's a rocket."
Yeah.
And the two kids are like, "All right." I said, "Calculate the area." They're like, "Okay, cool. We're calculating the area of a rocket." And then they both got the right answer. And then they came up with it really quickly. So I said, "All right, I'm giving you both best employee of the month.
Wow.
So, but you are in charge of designing your own badges. So come up with a shape that you really like." And they drew a shape on the screen and whatever. And then I said, "All right, this is a pretty complicated shape. How would you find the area to this?" They said, "Why do I need to do that?" Then I told them about a manufacturing process
Mm-hmm.
of laser printing.
Mm-hmm.
It says, "Okay, you need a 2D shape and the laser will come and cut it for you. But the price, how much you pay for this is dependent on how much area you have to cut out." So they're like, "All right, cool, I'll calculate the price." And I think if you just put in a little bit more effort and, make it interesting for them,
Yeah,
it just makes it so much more nicer. But what
I
I
love
was,
that. Can I just share
yeah,
something
for
on
sure.
that? You're
Hmm.
absolutely right. Because, what was a boring subject, you turned and transformed into something exciting. You took a
Hmm.
child who was bored and helped them to enjoy a subject and the process of learning. And I
Hmm.
think that's because you made it real. You made it practical. I did the same one lesson. Like I was struggling with some kids in math, and I said, "Oh, you know what? Um, Coco Maud and her family are going on holiday, and
Hmm.
you guys have to figure out, how much it's going to cost her. You've been hired, right? The team over there, they're going to a wedding. You've got to dress them. So I chose the kids that like, fashion and all that kind of stuff, right? And then I said, you guys, you're the travel agents. You got to book their tickets, right? And then it was like a whole team. I don't know what other teams I created, but suddenly they're doing all these calculations and maths, and we got to the final price like you did and everything, and they enjoyed it. The
Yeah.
same kids who were bored actually became very excited about their learning, and even a subject that they don't normally ordinarily find interesting, because they could see it's relevant.
Hmm.
I am going to need it when I grow up, because yeah, maybe I'll
Hmm.
want to go on a holiday one day. Maybe I need to shop for a wedding or whatever it may be. This is what my parents must be doing. I don't know what was going through their head,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
similar stories there. Yeah.
Definitely. So it's a lot more relatable and relevant, like you said. But I think the core of why I'm doing this is obviously to make them a little bit more interested, but also just have them think. Really, it's not like, okay, I give you the triangle of the formula of a triangle, and there you go, just use it. There's something that Nilamani Mataji actually told me recently. We were just talking about my music and stuff, and I said, she said, if when you talk to intelligent people, they don't want to be told what to do. You tell them, or you give them food for thought, and they'll come up with the right answer. And I found that so amazing. I mean, you and I both look up to her a lot.
Yeah. No, she's
And
absolutely.
that is something I've been keeping in mind. I mean, when I write songs and stuff like that. But it's the same thing with kids. Kids are very, very intelligent, and I have a feeling if we let them grow and you know keep their curiosity, and we keep that curiosity growing over the years, I think this world would be a very different place.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because there is the trap of rote learning,
Yeah.
mechanical learning, cramming, right? Data just stuffing into a person, and then they get out there in the real world, and it's like I can't just memorize my way through life. Like I've got to deal with people. That means emotions. That means like a whole dynamism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, real life problems don't come with an instruction manual that says do this, then do this, then do this, and press the button. Like this vending machine process. So I put the coin, I press the button, and I just get it. No, like you actually have to work hard. You have to give some thought. You need to be able to differentiate and discriminate as to what is correct or going to work in this particular situation and context. Application. Real education will empower a person to be very confident in application to a wide range of contexts
Yeah.
on their own, independently,
Independently.
consistently, not just once, consistently. They are consistent, they are confident, and a teacher's role is to set that high standard. And I think, what Nilamani said is absolutely brilliant, because you can't just make it easy or give children the answers. Can I just show you something? One second. I'm going to show this to Nilamani as well one day. So this is the learning pit. Have you seen it before?
I believe, yeah, I've seen something similar.
right? So this person is starting off and they're like, yeah, I'm going to do a maths problem or English or whatever subject it is, right? They're really
Mm-hmm.
happy. And then they get down here because they're like, oh, I actually don't know how to do this. And then immediately they'll want to be like, oh, can you help me, somebody? I can't do this. I don't know how to do this question. And as teachers, we have to go over and we don't give them the answers because, like Nilamani says, an intelligent person doesn't want to be told what to do. But the thing is, kids don't know their own innate, intrinsic, inherent intelligence. They have it. It's
Wow.
covered.
Yeah.
It's dormant. It's sleeping.
Mm.
A teacher who just doesn't give them the space to sit in that pit and get confused and struggle and make mistakes and fail and do all of that stuff, but then they themselves are the ones that come out. You're with them at every step and you're there helping in whatever ways you can facilitate, but they've got to realize they can often work out the answers for themselves. They
Mm.
may need additional help, they may need guidance, but a lot of the times they can do it themselves. And then
Mm.
they get out that pit. Of course, there you see, there's the teacher helping if needed, right? But they get out and then they feel, wow, that was amazing. That was
That was amazing.
adventurous. That was meaningful. I learned so many things that I didn't even know I could learn. They feel challenged, but yeah, they're changed by the end of that experience. It's great. Yeah.
Isn't that what's beautiful? Because we always talk about the journey rather than the destination being, the end goal, really. And I remember when I was in 7th grade, which is year 8 equivalent, and I was in Delhi, and we had this subject as called general knowledge. And the teacher was like, "All right, we're gonna have a test tomorrow." All the kids are like, "Oh, of course, we're kids." But up until that point, all the questions that she used to ask, or any other teacher used to ask, used to be literally word to word. So take any question and we form a statement out of it. So let's say this pen is blue. Let's say I pick up a pen and I say this pen is blue. And we've written that on the board. The same thing's written in the book. So now when we come to learn it, or at least the way I used to learn it, was literally just like that. This pen is blue. Now, I asked her, I said, "Oh, could you ask the question in a different way in the test? Is that possible?" She said, "Of course it's possible." I said, "But that's difficult. Because if you're saying, what is blue?" I'd be like, "I don't know." But you say, "What is this pen?" I'd say, "It's blue." Do you see that?
Yeah. Exactly like
But,
I'm saying, application.
right. But up until that point, I only learned things in that linear fashion. I never went backwards to see, what was going on. I think there's a word for this in English, but I don't, I'm really bad with the English, the vocabulary there. But at that point, I said, whoa, what if this happens to us in real life? And
Oh
that's
wow.
exactly what happens to us in real life.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I was like, okay, what if, we're doing all of these subjects, we're learning so many things, learning, quote unquote, learning so many things. But what if the real world is nothing like this? And I got scared. I got scared. I went back. I was in the bus and I remember just looking out the window and I'm like, if I want to do something with my life, I can't continue doing this. So then I'd have to look at things the other way around. And that's when my perception of how the world really was working out started to change. And that's when I started rebelling against, not rebelling, but I used to be like, guys, we need to change this. We need to change this. I just thought I'd share that because it was a bit of it just came to my mind when we were talking about the previous topic. It's a journey, right? Because that is where I started thinking differently, and I started going like, okay, I need to do things differently, and it was all the journey. And it's that journey that got me to where I am right now. And I'm not saying I'm at the top of the world, far from it, but I'm still in the journey. And in this journey, we are learning so much. And that's the whole point of the experience,
Yeah.
just tying it back. Yeah.
And you are changing things, you know. Perception is the name of, was it your album?
Yes,
Yes, well, there you go.
it is.
You're like, oh, I need to change my perception. And here you are all these years later, and you are.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about, you know, you and me, we're people who will almost go out of our way to try and make sure that the student learns things properly, understands things properly, but also not just learn the maths and science, but also learn something more, and obviously, but this, because it's so unconventional, in if we're talking about the academic syllabus, we're like, okay, we need to learn linear algebra, simultaneous equations, and trig, and all of a sudden now you're like, life. The
Mm.
kid is confused, obviously, but they sort of enjoy it. And I'll share a story with one of my, with what happened a few weeks ago with one of my tutees. But you often feel this resistance, right? Either from the parents or from the company that you're tutoring through, or even maybe even just by yourself, that you're like, okay, I know I'm talking about something really deep, but is it necessary? Or there's always some form of resistance.
Yeah.
Have you felt something similar, and what are the kind of challenges you faced in this sort of area?
Mm. That's a good question. I mean, like when I used to teach in schools, like it's just the way the education system is. I don't think it's just in London here. I think, over the world,
Yeah, of course.
there's an epidemic in the educational field that, um, yeah, children they're taught what to learn, but they're not taught how to learn and why to learn. It's like, okay, here's the subject. But again, like we've touched on it with the application, but it's also about them becoming more independent, and resilient, which, we've touched upon with the learning pit and things like that. And when it's a parent or a colleague, in the teaching field who's always learned that way, like, yeah, it's fine, just be mechanical and just, we don't have time for other things. It's not important to learn about compassion and forgiveness. And like, I know, okay, maybe a little bit, like maybe one assembly, or like, something a little different, but actually character, and consciousness is the foundation of education.
Mm.
How can you build a house without a foundation? It might be a really nice house, all these fancy calculations and formulae and poetic words and so many things. But if it makes a child proud or arrogant, or if they misuse that power and education, which is happening all over the world, there are powerful people, but they are overcome by selfishness and greed and so many other things. And it's not about criticizing anyone, because people are a product of their association. So if they've grown up with that kind of education, that's why they're like that. Whereas if as educators we can teach children holistically, where it's like academics and character building, then why can't the two meet and marry and live happily ever after? Why not? It can happen. Because otherwise the misunderstanding and the resilience comes because people know what they want, but they don't know what they need. And they
Wow.
think they're the same.
Yeah.
Like I was explaining to a parent recently, who was, yeah, actually, I'll be completely honest and say not happy with my holistic way of teaching. She's just like, well, no, just teach him, give him more work to do. And she told me that the child actually gets angry when he's pressured to do
Mm.
work. So then I'm thinking, okay, he needs some retraining so that he can start enjoying his learning again, rather than just keeping him stuck in this kind of exam mode or whatever it is. But she just couldn't see the sense of that, and how I was going to gradually get him prepared for his exams. But I was saying to some colleagues as well that what people want sometimes is quick, fast, easy, cheap. What I like to call microwave meal education, right?
Wow.
But that's not sustainable. That is not holistic compared to a freshly cooked homemade meal, which we all know is healthier and tastier,
And
actually,
nourishing.
and nourishing. Exactly. So we need to learn to be teach good education, which is holistic and well rounded, but be practical as well. You can't just be like, oh, yeah, we'll just have these really fun, deep conversations. And yeah, you have an exam coming. I'm not going to tell you how to deal with that. But no, do both. Do both.
Mm.
It
Mm.
is possible to do both, but you're not going to get the instant result in 5 seconds the way that
Yeah.
you want it. It's going to
Yeah.
take time. Education is also about building relationship and rapport. It's about making the experience of teaching and learning personalized, not pressurized, right? So a child, there's a film, what is it, that documentary, Wisdom of Trauma, right? Dr. Gabor Mate. I watched the free film screening maybe a few months ago. There's a wisdomoftrauma.org.
Okay.
Anyone who wants to watch it, I would really recommend it. But Dr. Gabor Mate says in there that I think it's 1 in 4 children, or 5, it might have been, experience clinical anxiety. 1 in 5. That's not even including children who are subclinical and still anxious.
Yeah.
That means most children are anxious.
Yep.
Is that what we want for our children? That's not. Maybe there are people that are listening to this podcast that have felt like that growing up. Yeah, we can play a part in changing things so that the children of today don't have to go through what maybe some of us went through.
Yeah.
That,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It's it's a difficult problem to solve because I think what we're talking about right now is only a symptom of a root problem, which is even deeper. When you said we're looking for this microwave meal education, which is quick and easy and cheap, the first thought that came to my mind is what makes us even want that?
Mm.
What happened to us in the first place that makes us want something quick and easy? Is it that we feel like we're lacking behind in life? Is it
Mm.
because we look around and we see so many people doing so much more than we are doing at our age or whatever, and everybody feels this way? And that's the most shocking thing. Even the people who we think are up there feel exactly the same way, which is just very interesting.
Mm.
So I think it's a symptom, and it's very difficult to and the example I also wanted to share was with one of my students, and I've been teaching him for 1.5 years now.
Okay.
And he first started off, I think, when he was 9 years old, 9 or 10, and we were doing some non-verbal reasoning and some mathematics together. And every time he'd get an answer right, he's like, "Ha, I'm so much better than everybody else." And every time he said that, I'd be like, the first few times I sort of brushed it off, but it kept coming back, and you could tell he was getting arrogant.
Wow.
And when it's an adult, you can address it. I mean, even when you're talking to an adult and they're not happy to have an open conversation, it gets difficult. But how do you address this to a kid?
Yeah.
And I see this a lot, especially in our Asian communities, where there's so much in my opinion, unnecessary competition
Mm.
and it just starts getting really toxic because now you just want to get good grades so you can beat the other guy.
Yeah.
that's not really a nice way to
No.
grow in life.
Yeah.
So I spoke to him and I said, listen, you don't know that you're the best. You're good, I will give you that. But here's where you're wrong, here's where you're wrong, and here's where you're wrong. And at the time I was like, I felt so bad that I had to say this to him, but I think it was necessary because it gave him a bit of a reality check. But 1 year later, and this was a few weeks ago, I said, all right, let's continue with the next question. And he said, but I don't want to. I said, why? What happened? He said, because I think this is so like unnecessary. And, I think we were talking about the number pi because it was like he was supposed to find the area of a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, why are we doing 3.14? I said, because that's the value of pi. And he said, why did humans make pi so complicated? Why couldn't they just have made it 3? Why is it 3.14? Da, 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 da. And I said, that's a fantastic question. I think it's just the way, we've defined pi.
Mm.
And he said, I wonder who even came up with numbers. Why do we even need numbers?
Mm.
Then I gave him a few examples. I was like, everything you wear, eat, are in right now, everything has maths in it.
Yeah.
So how is that possible? I said, well, the glasses you're wearing were calculated very specifically for your eyes.
Wow.
Lens, right? And the chair that you're sitting on, it's big because he's tiny, but it was made for, an average person.
Yeah.
And the mouse that you're holding, the screen that you're doing, all of this has maths. You need to calculate the area of the screen to know how many LEDs to put in.
Time
said,
is maths. Sorry to pause you a second, but it's low battery, and if I spend any more time not putting it out, then maths will not be on my side. I will have been defeated by the maths, but really, if I just cooperate with it and accept that it is existing, then lo and behold, my laptop is now charging now. We're all good to continue.
Great. So, you need to find the area of the screen to know how many LEDs to put in. And that blew his mind. He said, nobody ever told me this before. I said, I don't blame you. And then he started getting really getting really philosophical. And I said, all right, listen, I mean, all our lessons are recorded. So if I continue with this conversation for the next 20 minutes, they're going to kick me out. So I said, listen, let's do one thing. Let's finish this paper. Okay. And I will stay 10, 15 minutes extra after the class just for you. He said, are you sure? I said, yes. So then we started talking about life, and the questions he was asking were very deep. He said, when you think of childhood, you think happiness, right? And I said, it depends on the person. Not everybody has the perfect childhood, and a lot of our problems are born in our childhood. Mm. And anyway, the conversation went on, and he said, I didn't have the answers to everything he asked, inevitably. But I said to him, never let these questions go. No matter what you do in life, even if you have to, conform to the rules of your, whatever academics, then you're going to do GCSEs, then you're going to do A-levels in university or whatever, if you even want to do that. But never, ever let these questions go. Because in my personal life, Sonal, what has happened is I found answers to the questions in ways I could not imagine. Mm-hmm. I found them in maths. I found answers to life in areas of maths and science and physics. Wow. Just because I finally had certain words in my vocabulary to describe what I was going through or the feelings that I was going through. And it somehow just happened. And then eventually I came to Imperial, and then Casey Salk happened, and then we all know what happened after that. But I just think my point with this entire thing was, if we can somehow guide our students and kids in general to not let go of these very interesting questions that they have, because to some extent, Sonal, you and I are a lot more conditioned than they are because they're still young.
Yeah.
So we have a certain way of thinking already, and maybe to some extent it's even difficult to change that now, unless like we consciously just make sure that we're not defeated by it. But these kids are still very open.
I love that.
Yeah,
Wow.
I just thought I'd share that.
You've just answered your own question because you were saying like why. I can't remember the initial point you started off with, but it was along the lines of what's missing, like, and clearly that boy was, he's gone from this kind of arrogance to now questioning mind. And you did such a good thing as a teacher. As teachers, sometimes we need to show them, put a mirror up, and there's that saying in English, like, sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind, but it's not really cruel because it's actually constructive. I think they should change the saying. Sometimes you have to be constructive to be kind
Yeah.
because, sometimes the truth is a hard pill to swallow, but we need that pill. We need that medicine because, arrogance is a disease. It's a disease. It's something foreign to us. We are not by nature arrogant and angry and greedy and selfish, and so many of these diseases are plaguing the world. That's why we're having so many issues with climate right now, because we've kind of come up with this consumer, way of living and just exploiting and using and doing things without thinking and short-term gain, forget the long-term pain, and it's destroying the planet. So we need to go back to the start and figure out what even is real education.
Yep.
What is real education? And it begins with a questioning mind. Even in the beautiful, sacred Sanskrit, literatures, it says Atato Brahma Jigyasa, right? I know one of your sisters is called Jigyasa. So this questioning is so important. It's so key and crucial. And I'm glad that you're doing this with your students. But what I feel so pained to see is that you're being recorded, so you have to do the real education almost in secret. Now, what's the point of? Okay, I'm gonna have to give you a freshly home cooked meal in secret before the people that give the microwave minute meals find out. What kind of world we're living in? Everything's upside down. Where to do the right thing, you have to hide?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point you've brought up.
Yeah.
I must say, the company that I tutor with, I'm very grateful that they really respect my way of teaching.
Yeah.
And it's not always been the case with other, but I think I go out of my way to talk to the team, and if they ever have ideas, I brainstorm with them. I say, okay, this is going to be too much for the child, and you'd rather have smaller lessons but more frequently than have one lesson for 3 hours because the kid will just
3 hours.
exhaust.
Wow.
Yeah, no, and but I'm very happy that they listen, and they really respect what I have to say. So I think this
Trendsetter. That's what we need. We need trendsetters.
trendsetters.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
revolutionaries. Revolutionaries, actually.
Visionaries.
Yes, visionaries,
Yeah,
revolutionaries, all of this.
amazing.
The Sanskrit word, because Sanskrit is the oldest language in the world, you see. The Sanskrit word viplava means revolution.
Viplava.
Viplava. It's about creating, like you said, with perception, looking at things differently, seeing, okay, Albert Einstein said, if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll keep getting what you're getting.
Yes.
So considering that I myself was very confused and didn't know how to deal with challenging change, right? And until I was plunged in at the deep end, and I was very fortunate. I came across spirituality, amazing friends, all of that. But, that shouldn't be something just, for an elite few or whatever, if you're lucky or whatever. Ultimately, nothing is down to luck. We are creating our own universe based on our consciousness.
Yeah.
Education is about attitude, not just aptitude, right?
Wow.
It is about consciousness. And this is real education, teaching children that, well, if you don't learn to question, ask why. In fact, there's a line in the song Rise by Janavi and Willow that Janavi sings it. Don't hide from the questions that
Rise from
hide
within.
deep within.
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah.
So she's also making that point, that don't be nervous in doing that as well. It's a bit difficult because it's what it's called, like the dark night of the soul, where it's like, okay, I don't know. I'm asking these questions. I don't know the answers yet. And it's easier to just be safe and stay in. I talk to my children about 3 zones, right? One zone is the burnout zone. A friend told me this, right? Where, you pressurize yourself. Like you were saying, you get into IIT and you got to do all these exams and you just like intense pressure, and people lose their physical and mental health over these things. Is it really worth it then? Is that what we really want? People are doing that and they're a product of that. They're not really enjoying it, but no one's changing, right? So we need to change. We need to be brave to see, well, if that's not good for us and we're not really liking that, we've got to find a healthier alternative. If I don't want to have the microwave minute meal, I need to figure out how to cook.
Yeah.
Right? Because maybe that's a rarer thing, I had to figure out that at university. I used to have fast food most of the days for my lunch, and then I was like, okay, one day I just thought I'm just going to learn to cook properly, and then whatever it may be. But real education is character first, and using that as a foundation and a platform of which everything else can grow. It's like the roots of a tree. That's the most important part of the tree. The leaves, the twigs, the flowers, everything else will not grow unless you water the roots. So we've got to get back to our roots. Who are we? What is the purpose of life? Where are we going? Why are we even here? These are the kinds of questions we need to ask. So it's not just questioning, but questioning with real direction in a way that relates to the self and who we are. Because the most important education is to know who we are. If you ask most people that, who are you? They'll say, if I say myself, I'm Sonal, whatever, I'm 36, I'm a teacher, I'm Indian, I used to be a dentist or in training. But all of that could change. I could change my name. My age is going to change. Right? You can change all these externals, but we never change. Who is that person? You ask most people that, they'll be like, I don't know. No, I don't know either. Well, do you learn that in school? No, I didn't learn that in school. Did you? No. So, that's why there is wisdom available, especially in the literatures of the East, in great depth and detail about who we are. Things like karma and reincarnation. I was talking with my cousin who's just turned 21 now. We were having this conversation. I showed her this video on ABC News in America about this boy, James, who was 5 years old, and he remembered his past life as an air fighter pilot.
Wow.
He knew where his plane crashed, what the plane was called. He knew all these things that a 5-year-old would never know about planes and some other guy called James, right? And we don't teach children any of this stuff, but it's real. The way you treat someone, that's the way you're going to be treated. They need this educational principle because then they might think twice before, and this is very real, within the first couple of weeks of me being a teaching assistant before I was a teacher, I was in a classroom and right before my eyes, this 8-year-old boy just jumped up over the table and punched another boy in the face. 8.
Oh.
8 years old. Now, why? Why so much aggression and violence at such a young age? Because it's in the video games. It's in this, that, and the other. So education about association, who and what we spend our time with, that's who we're becoming.
For sure.
So if we don't teach children this stuff, they get, and also as parents, as educators, as teachers, if we don't set an example for them and give them healthy alternatives, then they're just going to get stuck into a way of life which isn't really going to help them, and it could even be dangerous for themselves and others, and it will lead to regret and confusion.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, three things I want to say before we leave this
Sure.
episode. One is, we were talking about learning the right things even as a kid. So I think in Jay Shetty's book, Think Like a Monk, he addresses this the first time he went. I believe it was Jay Shetty's story, and he went to the first time he went to become a monk, and there was an 8-year-old teaching younger kids how to breathe.
Mm.
And when he asked, what's going on here, I said, okay, what's the one thing that will be with you from the moment you take birth till the moment you die? Your breath.
Wow. Yeah.
And most of us, potentially including you and me, have no idea how to breathe
Yeah, I didn't. And I really
because
needed
nobody
it.
teaches us that.
Yeah, I was asthmatic. I needed to learn more than perhaps.
It's really crazy. Two, this is why I really like what Avanti schools are doing.
Mm.
You know about the Avanti schools, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the Avanti schools, and I was talking to a few teachers over there, who
Mhm.
are now some of my friends, amazing people. And one of the teachers showed me his classroom, and he said, "Look at the way the classroom's been arranged. Look at the colors and the way specifically things were being done. It was very conscious
Mm.
of how someone would feel, how someone would react." And he had this like um, appreciation box. So if anybody wanted to appreciate any other student or whatever, they can, and there's no shyness about it. They can do it anonymously if they wanted to, but the fact that we're finally opening up and talking about these things, or if there's something we don't like about somebody else and it's really bothering you, there's a feedback box that you can also put. So I really liked the way Avanti schools, and there are some other schools in the world who are finally incorporating these sort of mindfulness and um, meditation side of things as well. Obviously, Avanti is also like doing a lot of spirituality
Yeah.
alongside the normal stuff, which I think is just really amazing. And third thing is, I love how this episode has been us asking questions and finding a few answers, but it's one of those where it gets you thinking, and it's now at the forefront of our minds. So the next time we teach, or the next time we talk to somebody, or anybody else listening to this episode, I'm pretty sure you would have thought about these things in the past as well. But it's just a reminder that education is a foundation for us. It is, we're 3 or 4 years old when we go to school,
Mm.
and we talk about, and in spirituality we always say association is so important. And even in non-spirituality terms, there's a quote that says you are the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly.
It's anonymous, and I think nurturing and growing that curiosity, and showing people how to love one another
Yes. Yeah.
is so important.
I'm so
And
happy.
I'm not just saying this because it sounds cheesy or it sounds very fluffy, but I genuinely think this is something we all really need to improve on.
I absolutely agree. And it's, love is a powerful force which can work wonders in the world, not just sentimentally, but very practically as well, to change the face of the world. Because if we really loved the earth that we live on, surely it wouldn't be in the state that it is now. So things like appreciation and gratitude,
Yeah,
right, are so key. Because when we're grateful for something, we don't just use it whatever way we like or waste it. We actually appreciate it and use it for a purpose which is going to help and heal ourselves and help and heal others, in a really meaningful way. And I remember, it's interesting you spoke about spirituality. I remember 2 days I had to teach Judaism in a particular school I was in. The way that they did their RE syllabus was like maybe in year one, it's, I don't know, whatever, Sikhism, and then Buddhism and this and that. And the year I was teaching, it was Judaism, and it's just 2 days in the whole year. Like some people do it like 1 hour every week. Some schools, that's what a lot of schools do. But in this particular school, it was like just 2 full-on days of a particular world religion. So I found this video of a boy called Charlie, who is a little Jewish boy based in Manchester, and he was talking
Mm.
about his experience in the synagogue. And we were maybe a few minutes in, and he says, "Oh, I love offering a prayer. When I'm with my father in the synagogue, I pray for myself and I pray for others in the world."
Mm.
I loved that. He didn't just pray for himself; he prayed for others. Because you know what? You know what the most amazing thing about love is? It's that no one is thinking about themselves. Everyone is thinking about someone else more than they think about themselves. And that's how everyone gets thought of. There's the
Yeah.
example of a big room. Let's say 1 billion people. Let's just get the point right home. There's 1 billion balloons, and you've got to find the one with your name on it. Tejasva, right?
Mm.
It's impossible. But if everyone just goes to the next balloon next to them, and then they go to the person who has that name, then it's just so much quicker rather than trying to find, oh, I need to find my balloon, me, 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 me. No, who's this person? Let me go and give them their balloon. It's so much simpler. And of course, we need to know each other. Now, we can't know 1 billion people, but we can know the people in our life, in our area, whatever our sphere or arena is. Being personal is so important.
I love that.
So,
I
so
love that
in
so
this
much.
in this particular class, I said to the kids, I said, "What do you pray for?" I said, even if you don't follow religion or believe in God or anything like that, because spirituality is not about forcing and imposing. It's about giving people the space to discover that which is already within themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, just even if you don't pray, like, what do you wish for in life? As I said, what do you pray for? What do you wish for? Have a little talk amongst yourselves. Again, not just feeding them things, but getting to them to intelligently think for themselves. Intelligent people don't want to be told what to think. And this boy comes up to me and says, "Oh, I know a prayer. Can I say it in front of the class?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And then this like little girls came up with this. "Oh, we know a Christian prayer. Can we say it? We know it in Polish." I was like, "Yeah, sure, okay." Because I said yes to one kid. This is the challenge of being a teacher. It's like they all want to do something. And then this little Gujarati Hindu girl comes up and says, "Can I say a prayer in my language?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And then suddenly, I've just got this classroom of children, full of children who just want to offer their take on prayer and what's of meaning to them in a very personal way with each other. And you know what happened? Normally I struggle with behavior in a classroom, right? It's like, oh, be quiet, don't do that, blah, 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 blah. I had no problems that day.
Wow.
And the Muslim boy that started off, he said it in Arabic. It was a beautiful, like his voice was so like powerful and like so much energy. And he said this prayer, and one of the girls said, "Miss, I need a scarf. I don't have my scarf." And I said, so she said, "Can I have your scarf?" So she took my scarf and put it around their head. And then when the little Romanian children said their prayer, and they kind of got down on their knees, and I'm telling you, it was like magic. Every single kid, and then me following them. I learned from them. They just all got down on their knees. Whether they were from a different religion, whether they had no religion, they just all got down on their knees. And we were together. And there was, you know why? Because love is our common religion or family or whatever you want to call it. Love is
Mm.
universal,
Mm.
right? It is something we all share in common. We need to remind ourselves of that. We need to remind ourselves what healthy love is. It's not always just telling someone what they want to hear. You had to have a difficult conversation with your student. When you really care about someone, you will tell, no, a patient doesn't walk into a doctor's office with a broken leg and the doctor just says, "Oh yeah, you have a really healthy arm. That's great. I'll see you next time." No, look, I'm really sorry to tell you, but you've broken your leg, and you're gonna have to do this and that. But it's coming from a place of love,
Care. Yeah. Yeah.
so it works. So
Yeah.
you can even have difficult conversations. But what happens often is that we have this thing called the false ego, and we think, "Why are you telling me I have a broken leg? I don't have a broken leg. You have a broken leg. It's because you don't know." And then there's this whole kind of defensiveness,
Yeah.
and we actually sometimes we self-sabotage and cut ourselves off from the
Off.
very things and people that are trying to help us.
Yeah. That is amazing, and thank you for sharing that. And it's one of the many examples that proves that coming together, loving one another, is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So thank you so much, Sonal, for being here and sharing all of your experiences and giving us so much food for not only our thoughts but also our soul. And for anybody who wants to stay in touch with Sonal, she has an Instagram account called Miss Soul Gym. At the moment, it's not active, but I believe she will be returning soon. And obviously, if there's anything else that you'd like to talk to us about, please do send us a message. And Sonal, hopefully, we can get you back in season 2 and talk about the things we talked about right now, but also try and find a nice, constructive solution. I mean, we've brought up many good points, but we can try and shift the conversation a little bit and see how that goes.
Yeah,
Right?
sure. Let's continue the
Awesome.
conversation. I would love that. Thank you so much for having me here. Anyone who wants to contact me can also message me at sonal@misssoulgym.com. It's misssoulgym.com. And thank you for just giving us all the opportunity to not hide from the questions that are within, and for getting us to truly think about what matters. You started off as a child, rebelling or whatever, a good rebellion, a good revolution. And I look forward to continuing the conversation, like you said.
Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. We really hope you learned something new. Before we end, let's take another moment to reflect on the word education. After this, think about what changed between your feelings before and after the episode. This podcast was created so we can listen to all our stories and learn from each other, because there's so much that we all experience in our individual journeys. Being able to have even a small glimpse of someone's journey can add so much perspective to our lives, help us grow together, and be able to better understand ourselves and each other. Despite all our differences, there's so much more that we have in common. This is a listener-supported podcast, so any level of Patreon subscription or one-time donation will be accepted with a lot of gratitude and used back to making this podcast experience even greater. The different subscriptions can be found on my Patreon page, which will be linked in the description. This was recorded during COVID times with little to no professional equipment, so the quality may sometimes vary. We apologize for this inconvenience, but despite that, we hope you were able to connect with the message of this episode. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you next week. Take care.